Good evening. I'd just like to welcome everybody to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 11th day of April 2023. I just want to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. Having said that, we'll call the meeting to order. I'll look for a motion. Sorry, we'll do a rise and report from closed session first. I'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Motion's passed. I'd like to report that in closed session tonight, council approved the closed session minutes from March 28th and 30th. Received for information 2 confidential staff reports from the clerk regarding personal information about identifiable individuals and gave direction to staff. Received for information the confidential staff report requested by council regarding the proposed OMERS bylaw and gave direction to staff. And received for information a confidential staff report regarding a confidential third-party information and gave direction to staff. Having said that, we'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda that presented. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Deputations, and I know we have a number of registered deputations on tonight's agenda. First up would be Deborah McLeod, who has a deputation with respect to the official plan proposed urban boundary. Is Deborah here? Come on, Deborah, come on up and just sit in front of the microphone, and we'll ask you to, you'll probably have to talk fairly close to it just so the folks at home, we can hear you here, but the folks at home sometimes can't. So welcome and then go ahead.
Can you hear me through that? Thank you, through your worship. My name is Deborah McLeod. I'm a landowner in Lot 15, Concession 1. Our parcel is directly impacted by the proposed urban boundary adjustment recommended as part of the official plan update. Amongst the information already provided to council regarding our situation was a timeline of our participation in this process. Our intention with that was to ensure that council understood that our interest is not reactionary, but it's actually part of a conversation that we started with the town 2 years ago, before an official plan review was announced and before a boundary expansion was even a reality. At that time, we let the town know our concern about the impact development would have on our property, and asked that if a boundary expansion did come about, that consideration be given for the line to be moved to the western boundary of Lot 15 as opposed to the midline. In January of 2022, after learning that an official plan review was being conducted, we had a meeting with the town and IBI to discuss our parcel. And we were told that our biggest obstacle was that the lands involved were currently designated prime agricultural. And we were invited to submit a rationale that about our parcel that spoke to that. And through Councillor Pinnell, council has received a copy of that submission, and it was dated February of 2022. We don't have backgrounds in city planning, and nor did we hire a consultant to write the report for us. We read the official plan and the provincial policy statements and consulted the OMAFRA guidelines and soil maps and read the strategic plan and the recreation plan and the transportation study. And we really were trying to put together a submission that would be meaningful to the review process and that tried to balance what was important to the town and private interests. And the town did acknowledge that it was a robust submission. Yet even with that, and the fact that we have a share in over 1,700 feet of the proposed boundary adjustment, we are not really truly afforded a place at the table in this discussion, not personally notified of the proposed adjusted line, and as yet not provided an explanation for a recommendation that is in direct contrast to what the town was fully aware we were trying to avoid. We've been told that the decisions aren't final and that the public will have an opportunity to comment, but we are stakeholders, and if we have given our input and regardless of its robustness, it had no effect, what possible difference could a comment from the larger public make on the interests of our parcel? And for most, or maybe all of the people in the room tonight, the urban boundary adjustment, the line is a line on a map. But for me, it's a line that I can actually walk right up to. And for town and the IBI and council, it's a line that you will make recommendations and motions on and votes. But for me, it's a line that I will daily live with your decisions, possibly for the next 20 years, essentially the rest of my life. And as proposed, it will take what I have and it will leave me without really any options to compensate for that. It would be one thing if we had inquired about inclusion and there was no adjustment being proposed, but an adjustment is proposed and it stops just short of our request, a mere 600 feet or so further west in what has been and continues to be the path of residential growth and where there is a natural and identifiable change in land use. And I'm left asking why this parcel is excluded and why an opportunity for potential tax revenue is left not maximized. There are several things about the rationales provided in the background report related to the boundary adjustment that contradict, I think, how our parcel is being handled. And when I combine that with some non-answers I find myself running up against, I can't help but wonder whether there is some reason the property is being unnecessarily or perhaps even unjustly constrained. I can't help to think that if the town had truly tried to accommodate a resident and a taxpayer, could not the rationale for the exclusion of the property be at the ready or strong and supportable. The background report gives two rationales for the western boundary expansion, regularization of the line to follow parcel fabric, and the accommodation of landowners interested in developing their lands. Including our parcel would be consistent with following parcel fabric, and it would not create any irregularity that is not seen elsewhere around the perimeter of a typical urban area. So that rationale didn't help me understand why our parcel was excluded. The second rationale referred to accommodating landowners interested in developing their lands. And as you can appreciate, that didn't make sense to me either. The background report does not specifically identify the expressions of interest in the expansion area, nor how many there are. And it would be easy to assume that everyone that was interested was accommodated. And it's not clear to me how council would have come to know that that was in fact not the case. There is a map in the update presentation used to talk about industrial land inventory. It shows there are 3 expressions of interest on the west side of the western boundary. 2 have been included and 1 has not. And my guess is that the 2 included represent developer interests. In support of reducing the urban area, the rationale speaks directly to the unnecessary long-term constraints policy would place on those landowners if left in the urban boundary. And it acknowledges that urban is not a designation consistent with what is true about their land use for the foreseeable future. That same rationale, however, has not been equally applied to the expansion area. Excluding our parcel from the urban area locks it into policy that places it under unnecessary long-term constraints not truly reflective of its land use. Our submission provided a rationale to support how Lot 15, Concession 1, does not exhibit the agricultural characteristics of PA land and continues to trend toward urban use, supported once again by the proposed western expansion. Our parcel doesn't deserve to be constrained by a designation of PA while the other half of the lot is released from that constraint. And so I continue to wonder, why is this parcel excluded? Because the lands involved in the western boundary expansion are all PA lands, how the expansion aligns with policy is probably the most important rationale. The background report references policy, but doesn't address how the adjustment aligns with that policy. But as I understand it, an adjustment may be permitted as long as there is no net increase in the boundary area, intensification and redevelopment targets are supported, And where prime ag lands are involved, it's not a specialty crop area. There's no non-prime ag lands available that are a reasonable alternative. And there is no prime ag of lesser priority available that is a reasonable alternative. The proposed western boundary expansion extends over lot 15 in concession 1 and 2. And it's reasonable, therefore, that a determination of PA lands of lesser priority could apply in this case, as the two concessions differ in their agricultural characteristics. Lot 15 in concession 1 is, as noted in our submission, highly fragmented, has small parcels, and continues to trend to urban investment as opposed to agricultural investment. And if I understand the policy correctly, and concession 1 lands are the lands of lesser priority, they would be required to be utilized before the concession 2 land. And so again, I wonder why our parcel is excluded. I noticed, however, that the concession 2 land is being immediately incorporated into the secondary plan, and I wonder why. And is it therein that lies the answer to my question? Having said that, I am sure there are some important and exciting things for the future of this town wrapped up in the secondary plan. And I'm asked why the town can't justify both the concession 1 land, concession 2 land, and our parcel in a year when it is proposing to release so much agricultural land and just asking for a small additional portion in exchange to better be adjusted to the growth pattern. To me, that seems honestly justifiable as upholding the spirit of the provincial policy. I'm still not clear how growth numbers and fit into all of these pieces, and I only have 10 minutes. So I'm respectfully asking council to not allow the proposed boundary expansion as currently drawn to proceed to county until you have considered your position on this matter. If you agree that our property is being unnecessarily and potentially unjustly constrained, that provision be made for its inclusion before the boundary recommendation is put before the county and the province. Although it has been said that it would be non-binding, I think we would agree that it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to change. So it would have been my preference to sit down around a table and have a conversation about this with the town. But I thank council for the time to share my perspective this evening. And through your worship, that concludes my comments.
Great, thank you, Ms. McLeod. That's a very thorough presentation. If you just hang tight.
Yeah.
Does anybody on council have any questions of Ms. McLeod? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Oh, sorry,
Mayor.
Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Deborah, if you could just speak to us a little bit about your land and how it lays with the current proposed boundary lines coming up to, it'll come up to half of lot 15. So therefore, your property sits in the remaining half of lot 15. And therefore, development could come up to your fence line. And here you have prime agriculture land, which is covered in trees. And now you're going to have, you could have, or you will have houses all backing onto the one side. And I think you said about 1,300 feet or so.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we went easterly on your property, there is, or sorry, westerly on your property, there's a defining line where the trees are gone and it's a plowed field.
Yes, there's a farm field on in lot 14, so on the west. So if the boundary line came up, the western boundary line of lot 15, my property would be here and the farmland would be here. Yeah.
You know, it's not very often and we see here and we ask some, and we're talking to somebody who wants inclusion. Normally when you have something like this, you want to be excluded from it. So I thank you for your time on this. Speaking of time, there is timeframes that need to be done and we have that out and we have it on bang the table. And I see that you want to present to us here instead of writing on there. Maybe if I could just ask through to you, Mr. Worship, to Michael, if we could just talk about what the next timelines are going to be. And then also, I heard something today about the provincial policy is in a draft form of maybe being changed.
Yeah, are you in a position to comment, Michael?
Yeah, yes, Your Worship, I can make comment.
Great, thank you.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Pennell. So the draft boundaries that were shown in the background report are very much draft at this point, right? We were looking for council's initial feedback and input on the rationale to modify the boundary based on the presentation at the last meeting and information contained in the background report. Those lines are still subject to change based on furthering our review. County of Lennox and Addington is still updating their population projection numbers. We were using numbers based on information that they provided previously. We understand those are going to change. So what we were looking for was some feedback from council on the proposed approach at a conceptual level, and that we would sharpen the pencils and come back with a more robust recommendation at a later date throughout the update process. County council is to be receiving an update on the status of their official plan, very much similar to the fashion that we presented at the last meeting. Nothing binding, just conceptual. Here's the direction in which staff are going, still subject to change. So a decision of county council would need to be rendered before a decision by the Town of Greater Napanee Council, which effectively our official plans need to align. From my understanding, the county council is looking to pass their official plan update in the fall of this year, and we're more or less neck and neck with them throughout that process. So it would be a late fall, early winter, before the end of the calendar year is what we're targeting at this point in time, and we're on track to do that, as well as the county at this point. On Thursday of last week, the province released comment and a draft new provincial planning statement. So they're now not called the provincial policy statement. It's now called the provincial planning statement. Contemplation of boundary adjustments are no longer under draft language, would no longer be required at the time of a comprehensive municipal review. So right now, the only time in which you can significantly modify or enlarge an urban boundary is during a process that we're going through now, which is on a 5 or 10 year cycle. That would go by the wayside, and any landowner would be able to approach the municipality and ask for an expansion to include their land within such boundaries. So still in draft form, very fresh. It's still open for public comment until June 5th. We're not sure what comment might be received by the province. However, at this point in time, that's the direction in which they're heading. So it would really relax urban boundary adjustments moving forward into the future. And if we can take anything from the passage of Bill 23, it's likely that there won't be there won't be very major changes made to that draft language, and it would likely receive royal essentially shortly thereafter. So meaning it would become in force in time with, before our official plan update process is concluded. So there's just a little bit more background that's very, very fresh for council as well.
That's great. Thank you. Just as a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Your Worship. Michael, you mentioned that the county has to have their plan ready before we accept our plan. If we were to adjust the lines, what kind of a date would we need to have that information to them so they know what we're wishing to do?
Through Your Worship, we would likely be looking at an October, November, ballpark, preferably early October. But the timing again is always subject to change depending on, information lagging from certain agencies and such, but we're looking at October.
Great.
For a final date. Ideally, we would have more definitive direction, before then, towards, I'd say, end of August would be more realistic, but October would be kind of a last minute date.
Thanks. With it, sorry, just one more, if that's okay, Your Worship.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, and one more and I'll be done. Mike, through you, Mr. Worship, with the provincial planning policy, with the information that you received, did you have any indication of how long that would take for them to have it from draft to final? Give you any indication?
Through Your Worship, the comment period's open until June the 5th of this year. And likely that we would probably see a final version approved by the province and in effect, towards the end of June, early July, I would think, given the timings that we saw with Bill 23's passage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions of Ms. McLeod or actually have Michael? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. I think what we've heard tonight is that there's probably still time that there's for consideration of this. Obviously, we're not in a position tonight to make any type of decision. But I think your purpose is to bring this forward to us to make us aware of what your concerns are and what your requests are. So I thank you for that. And I think, like I say, there is some time, as you heard, a whole bunch of balls have got to start falling into place before any of this is going to get done anyway. So we're looking at probably early fall before any decisions are going to be made on it anyway. So, but thank you for your detailed presentation, and thanks for coming here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is we have a registered deputation from I guess we need to, the clerk has reminded we need to do a motion to note and receive the presentation of Deborah McLeod. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, Ms. McLeod, can you send us your presentation? Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think she'll probably send it through Madam Clerk.
Through Jessica would be
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, if you don't have her email, we can get your email afterwards, but it's be Jessica Walters or clerk.
I believe we've been in touch.
Yeah, okay. No, perfect. That's good. So thanks, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you.
All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Sorry. Next up is Natasha Augustine with respect to backyard chickens or backyard hens. Come on up, Natasha.
I guess, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I don't have a lot more to add besides the submission, but I just wanted to come and say that I think the backyard hen business is really important to a lot of people. And it came up last August and I think it got put aside, but understandable with council wrapping up. So I just wanted to come and put my 2 cents in that hopefully council has time to consider bylaws this time around. Falling in line with, I think, everybody else in our area. And just to come, if anybody has questions or concern, I can answer any questions as someone who's lived with backyard hens. So, yeah.
Great, thanks, Natasha. Is there any questions or comments from council with respect to with respect to your deputation, sorry. Natasha's deputation. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Your worship. Natasha, whereabouts do you live? I don't need a specific street number. Are you like more rural or?
I'm in the weird M2 zone off of Van Leuven.
Okay,
So Van Leuven, Goodyear Road, we're residential houses in there within the M2 general industrial.
okay, good, thanks.
Great. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, ma'am, for coming and speaking to us. We'll look for a motion to note and receive the deputation from Natasha Augustine. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion's carried. We are now willing to listen if there are any unscheduled deputations, if anybody wants to speak, and I think there may be one. We'll just need to do a motion to note to receive, right? So you want the motion first, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, council is willing to hear the unscheduled deputation.
Okay, we'll do a motion for council to hear the unscheduled deputation. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. Come on up, sir. And what we'll do is we'll get you to identify yourself. And unfortunately, we can't give you as much time as the registered ones, but the rules say 3 minutes, but sometimes my 3 minutes stretch on, but we'll ask you to try.
I'll try to be
stay-
brief.
But we'll try and get you to stay within that time frame anyway. So go ahead, just your
Yeah.
name, sir.
Yeah, it's CJ O'Brien,
Okay, thank you.
and I'm here tonight to speak on the condition of Cook's Road.
Okay,
As Councilman Pennell knows, and as well as Deputy Calver knows, Deputy Mayor Calver knows, the road condition has deteriorated to the point where it's become dangerous and to the point where our vehicles are getting damaged on a weekly basis because of very bad potholes. on the road. Now, the grader has been out 3 weeks ago, and within a couple of days of the grader grading the road, the condition deteriorated right back to where it was because there's been no base on the road that I know of in 12 years. Excuse me. Most of my neighbors have agreed that this has become an ongoing problem. We've had a lack of maintenance on the road for years, and now it's come to the point where it's damaging our vehicles. It's making the road dangerous to travel. If you meet a large vehicle, their garbage truck, whatever, on the road. One instance, we had an ambulance called out, and the ambulance had to take extra time to get to the residence because of the condition of the road was so bad. It had to travel at a slower speed. So I'm hoping, I know I've talked to Deputy Mayor Calver, the road is supposedly scheduled for reconstruction. And I'm hoping that that can be moved up to a priority or emergency or whatever they have to do to get it done as soon as possible before we have a serious problem or a serious accident on the road. Some of my neighbors are here tonight too, also to confirm that they've had damage to their vehicles, broken shocks, broken struts, bad tires, belts breaking tires, road impassable at some points when it's had heavy rain. I'm just hoping that the council can have a look at it. I invite any of the council members to come out and drive the road and see if you would like to drive that road every day to go home or go to work. Because I guarantee you, after one drive on that road, most of you will not want to drive on it again. It's become that bad. I know there's other roads in the city that are bad also, but there's a lot of people living on this road, over 50 people, and they have to travel at least twice a day. I thank the council for the time.
Great, thank you, sir. If you just hang tight, and we'll see if, does anybody have any questions of Mr. O'Brien with respect to his deputation? Seeing none, it sounds like we're aware of it. Unfortunately, sometimes things don't happen as fast or quickly as we all would like them, but it does sound like we're aware of the situation, and I can assure you that we will forward your deputation information on to the appropriate people within the town. I just want to thank you for coming and bringing it to our attention, and hopefully sooner than later, we can find some kind of reprieve for you up there anyways, but it's a little bit satisfying to know that at least we're aware of it. Sometimes we're not aware of it, and then things get lost in the shovel, so.
Yeah, it's just, I'm concerned about the timeline, that's all.
Yeah, and rightfully so. So thank you for coming tonight, and we'll look for a motion to note and receive the deputation of Mr. O'Brien. Moved by Councillor Shanks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shanks.
It's something where we should give direction to the roads department. They're very well probably aware of it, but if it's grading once every 3 weeks and after the amount of rainfall that we've had, everybody doesn't like going down 49 highway when you're going into Pick, but this is our municipality. You know, maybe they should take a look at it. Maybe they can grade a little bit more, wait until the appropriate time to see what we can do and what we can't do, but at least grade it so that you can drive down it. That's, you know, have the guys look at it.
And I'm sensing that's probably what's happening now, and that's why I think it's important that we can forward this information. We can forward the information onto our roads department just to make sure and to do an assessment on it. Like I say, I think it's important that we do it that way. I mean, we don't want to disrupt the apple cart with respect to the way that they're doing business as well. But I think if we bring it to their attention, that obviously there's concerns and the neighbors are here to tell us about it.
Yeah.
I think we should bring it to their attention. Madam Clerk.
So through your worship, what I have here is that council note and receive the deputation from Mr. O'Brien and further the council comments be referred to the roads.
We'll look for, are we good with that? We'll look for a friendly amendment.
Just given that the roads department is not here to speak to back to their operations.
Yeah, that's my only concern. So
through your worship,
yep, go
if
ahead.
we
Councillor
add
Hicks.
something there to have the staff report back on what their proposal is, we need a date. I don't think it's unfair to request that the roads department advise where on the priority list the road is currently or what they're proposing. I see Mr.
If
Thompson.
I may, your worship, through you to Councillor Hicks, we meet every week after this council meeting, so that is on the list. We'll discuss that tomorrow. I'll bring it back to council in terms of where that is in priority list and what the future plans are for that road.
Okay, all right, that would be great. Thank you.
What do we have for a motion, Madam Clerk? Do we need a friendly amendment to it? What do we have for a motion? Let's start there. What do we have for a motion, and then we'll look for the mover and the seconder to see if that's sufficient.
So I have the council not receive the deputation from Mr. O'Brien, and further the council direct that the comments be referred to the roads department for a staff report. Post maintenance plan.
Our mover, who do we have for a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shank and Councillor Penal. Are we good with the friendly amendment with respect to that motion?
I'm good with it, but as you well know, if you have that many residents here, there's that much of a concern. You know what I mean? And if the potholes, I live 45 minutes south of that. So all I'm saying is if there's that much of a concern, you know, have the guys take a look at it and say, hey, you know, we have 450 kilometers of road. It's very hard to have everybody driving down every road, but if the potholes are that bad, let's at least get it graded or do something to, you know, that you're not losing a shock or a ball joint on it. That's all.
Yep.
But they're going to deal with that tomorrow.
So we're good with the friendly amendment to the motion that's on the floor? Are we good with that then? Okay, perfect. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Did you have an unregistered deputation as well?
Yeah, I would just like to add something about the road, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, come on up and give us your name.
Dorcella Burke, 142 Cooks Road.
Okay.
So on October the 10th, I actually was coming from the north end of Pine Grove onto Cooks Road. The north end of the road is so damaged and so eroded that my truck was launched into the culvert. $6,000 in damages to my vehicle were done. I'm still waiting because parts are so hard to get right now. I'm still waiting till May. I've now put $3,000 more waiting for parts into my vehicle because of the condition of the road. As well, I had my 6-year-old second cousin with me, and he is now terrified to come visit me, as well as his aunt who is here tonight, who lives across the street from me. This road is ridiculous. I drive the road 4 times a day. I leave at 7 in the morning to go to work. I drive a pickup truck. Most of the neighbors on the road are seniors and don't all drive big vehicles. If the accident that happened to me in my pickup truck had have happened to one of the seniors on the road, there would have been major injuries. Because the road has eroded so much from Pine Grove coming down onto Cooks from on the north end, that the limestone is now sticking out of the road and now launching you when you make that corner from Pine Grove to turn right onto Cooks Road. You have to go past the center line of if people were oncoming, you have to go past into the oncoming lane on Cooks to make that corner. You cannot make that corner regularly.
Okay, great. Is there any questions? I think we're getting the idea. So as you heard, it's going to be brought to the staff's attention. They'll be bringing back.
Yeah, because they graded it 3 weeks ago. The guy was there for 15 minutes. I was home the whole time. He did 2 passes down the road and was gone. The next day it rained and potholes again.
Okay, no, that's obviously needs some attention. So
Perfect. Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
So do we want to note and receive?
Yeah, just so it's official record.
Okay, well, so look for a motion to note and receive that deputation, and I think if we link it to the other one, I think the motion should suffice. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calvert. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any other unscheduled deputations? Seeing none, we'll move on. Correspondence for information. Is there anything with respect to the correspondence for information that somebody would like to pull out and speak to? Sorry, we're going to back up, Councilor Pennell. We got the adoption of the minutes, so we'll deal with first. Sorry. We'll look for a motion for the adoption of the minutes for March 28th, 2023 and March 30th, 2023. As presented, moved by Councilor Hicks, seconded by Councilor Pennell. Any further comments, questions, or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we'll get into correspondence, and I believe that Councilor Pennell would like to withdraw one or pull out one of the correspondences for information. Have a conversation about it. Am I correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd
Yep.
like to pull the communication from the town of Essex in regards to municipalities retaining proceeds from tax sales.
Okay, go ahead.
And what is happening is, or once before, I understand that when we have a tax sale, that any proceeds above what was owed to the municipality were able to keep those funds, and that has been changed. And now there is a communications going around asking certain bodies in the government to reinstate this. Tax sales take a long time. There's a lot of time and monies invested in conducting a tax sale. And we're starting to see that there is proceeds from these tax sales. And once the proceeds are provided, that the town needs to back to the government. So the ask is for the town to be able to apply to retain these funds. So that's the reason why I'd like to separate that. And I do have a motion if you would like.
Great. Let's listen to your motion and we'll put it on the floor and we'll see if there's any other conversation that goes with it then.
Perfect. Great.
Yep. Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
So my motion is that council support the motion from the town of Essex and direct administration to send a letter to all relevant taxation bodies, including the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, Lennox and Addington Council, MPP Rick Brise, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all other municipalities in Ontario, urging them to reinstate the previous legislation that permitted a municipality to apply for and retain the surplus proceeds from a tax sale in their jurisdiction.
Thank you. So moved by Councilor Pennell, seconded by Councilor Hicks. Is there any further comments, questions, concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Is there anything else that anybody else would like to pull out with respect to the correspondence for information? If not, we can do it under one motion to proceed. Seeing none, so we'll look for a motion to note and receive the correspondence information items dated 11th of April 2023 to be noted and received. Moved by Councilor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Correspondence for action. I don't believe we have any correspondence for action, Madam Clerk. Unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business that need to be spoken to? Seeing none. Staff reports, legislative services, backyard poultry. Do we have a staff member that's going to speak to that?
Through your worship, that's me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
So through your worship, as council has heard earlier, there has been some discussion as to backyard poultry. Staff have left this up to council to determine what direction we should take. Our only comments would be that if you want us to allow this, it will require some regulation to make sure that there's not nuisance impacts to residential neighbors, which will take some staff resources to manage that process. And if you do decide you want to move forward with this, our recommendation would be to follow the example of other municipalities and do it gradually through a trial program. Any other questions on this?
Councilor Shank.
So after this was brought up at our last council meeting, and being a farmer myself, I thought, well, this isn't this great for the kids to go ahead and have 4 hens in the backyard. So I did a little bit of work, homework, contacted Canadian Food Inspection Agency, talked to some other poultry farmers, and talked to, I don't know, people out of the States and everywhere else that I went ahead. And because of the avian flu crisis that we currently have globally. And they are coming up with hopefully a vaccine here very shortly out west, and DC is hit really hard. And the transmissibility of chickens or the avian flu going into humans, there is a grave concern of that in the health also. At this time, it's a hard no right now for any backyard hens. All right, until we have a policy or they have a vaccine in place, that we can do this very much on the safety side. Because the problem, what my concern is it's already gone into, and it's killed the dog, and it's gone into this and gone into that. But so the problem is you have some kids, like any other kids will do, in your backyard, and you have 4 hens. All right. And, you know, the chance of tracking anything back, or a cat, if you happen to lose a bird, or, you know, through avian flu, and it comes into the house, I just don't want to take that risk at this time. All right. I'm in favor of having some backyard poultry and letting everybody have that, you know, back to the farm, and having teaching your kids this and supplying eggs and poultry. But with the concern that I have with avian flu and the problem in Prince Edward County, you had a flock in Pennsylvania. There's major problems there. And it's the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency had already said there is basically every wild fowl that's flying, there is avian flu in it. And it's a grave concern in the poultry industry right now. So at this time, no, I'll wait until they've developed the vaccine. Hopefully that's going to be coming down the pipe very shortly. When that comes down and we can do it in a safe manner, then great. But I don't want to start something that might cause any illness to anybody or any human.
Great, thanks, Councillor Shank. Does anybody else want to comment? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver.
Yeah, I have to echo what Councillor Shank says. Just the other day, municipalities around York Region, Canada are warning their residents to take action after hundreds of birds were found infected with the flu. They're recommending dogs should be kept on their leashes and all cats kept indoors, and bird baths should be removed. This is not a good idea or a good time to bring in a backyard chicken bylaw. I think we should stick with our current bylaw we have in play for it until this straightens up. And there has been cases already where it has transferred into mammals and killed them. And there's a case, I believe in Chile, where it's transferred into a human and killed them as well. So this isn't something to be taken lightly. Unfortunately, at this time, I wouldn't even remotely support it.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Does anybody else wish to comment on the issue? Great, I think staff are looking for some type of direction this evening. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct.
So I'll make a vote. I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I was getting there. No, you go ahead.
I'll make a motion at this present time. All right, that the Greater Napa need not consider having a backyard pump, allowing backyard hens for poultry this current time. You'll put that to
May
me.
I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Would you like to explicitly state due to concerns about avian
Yeah,
flu?
that's the reason why you're perfect. That's who she is.
And then I'm sensing that you want to maintain the status quo with respect to the bylaws that we already have in effect right now. And the only other question I have before we put it on the floor is do you want to put a timetable on it to come back, or do you want to wait until we're comfortable to talk about it again?
I would, in 2 or 3 months, if they have a vaccine available that they can go ahead and all the poultry, then hey, I have no problem then. All right. So if you want to say, what do you think? Yeah, 3 months, 4 months?
Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship. I think having a timeline on it, it's a topic of interest, and I think everyone understands the concerns and no one can argue with the concerns. But I think if we revisited this even in the fall, September would give ample time for the the next year's spring crop of chicks, maybe.
Yeah, so if we could just, Madam Clerk, I think you may be able to
Reword that.
word Councillor Shank's motion so that we can all get a good idea and we'll look for a seconder. Did you have something in place or?
So I have the council receive for information, the Legislative Services Backyard Poultry Report. Further, that due to safety concerns regarding the avian flu, council not consider a policy to allow residential backyard hens at this time. And further, the council directs staff to bring this matter back for consideration in the fall.
Well, we haven't got a seconder on it, so let's hear it. Yeah.
Of 2023.
Sure.
It's small, but it's
vital.
Yeah,
Understand.
we might just, we'll make it complete if we're gonna do it, yeah. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Shank. Do we have a seconder with respect to the motion? Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. 9.2 CAO renewal of general engineering service contract. I believe that would be Mr. Pinson.
Thank you, Worship, for council. The general services for engineering services expires at the end of April. So there is an option in that contract to renew for another 5 years. It's being suggested that as a result of us looking out all of our contracts and MOUs, that we put it at the tender, that we extend it for another year and then put it at the tender just to make sure we're getting best value. This is by no means a performance issue with the engineering firm. It's just a matter of making sure that's still best value for the dollar.
Is there any questions or comments of Mr. Pinson? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship, through you. John, the contract states that there's 2 available extensions of 5 years if it's beneficial to us, the town. Do we know for a fact that they would be willing to allow us a 1-year extension?
We haven't had any, I haven't had a conversation with the firm as of yet.
Okay, yeah, that's going to be important for myself and probably the rest of council. Just that when I go and I read the staff report here, I was a little concerned with that. It says, and further that council approved the renewal. And I wouldn't want to get into a 5-year with that. So we'll hear what the rest of council needs to say, but I'd like to do some wordsmithing on a motion if it goes through, just to make sure that it's only for the 1 year, because I am very much in favor of going out for tenders and to see what's out there for us.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
JD Jewell has been doing our engineering for a long time, as long as I can think of. They also do it for a lot of local municipalities, and I believe even the county. I think that it would be very beneficial to renew the 5-year contract, just due to the fact that you get two engineering companies in, and one guy says, well, I don't really like the numbers, and by them working for us and having them, I mean, they're not just working this year, they're working 2-3 years down the road on capital projects. The last thing we want to do is bring in another accounting firm, and maybe we don't trust their numbers. Now we're back into more cost to get it redone. I don't know if we had issues with them. I would agree 100%. But does anybody know of any current issues with them?
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's just I know we're trying to streamline everything and look at different contracts and that, but you get into looking at capital projects that are out there a couple of years, and then we want to bring in another engineering firm next year. You can just throw all the work that's been done out the window.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Calver. Is there anybody else that has any questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, Mr. Pinson. So I agree, going out for tender on all professional service contracts is a good idea. Fresh eyes. Are you getting the best value for your dollar? I also agree with Deputy Mayor Calver that they've done nothing to warrant us not using them for the work that they've already got in play, for what is already in play on major projects. They would still be involved in those
Absolutely. And through your worship, I believe they're involved in the
East Street?
Eastern extension.
So we would not, we would continue to use their
Absolutely.
services,
Absolutely.
even if it was, God forbid, 2 years down the road?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't know if that alleviates some of your concerns, Deputy Mayor.
I guess my concern would be how would we use an engineering firm that 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road that we no longer keep on staff?
They've been, so correct me if I'm wrong, we retained their services, we've paid them for the work that's been done to date. We will continue to use them for that particular project.
Absolutely. And there's nothing saying that once we go with the RFP, they're not still the best quality, right? But it's normal in municipalities every 5 years to go out and just have a fresh look to see what's out there.
It's out there. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calver, and then go to Deputy Mayor, or Councillor Pennell.
So I guess my only concern is, I'm not arguing it's a good idea to go out and get pricing, but this contract's been coming up for 4.5 years, almost 4 3/4. We're just hearing about it kind of now type thing. I'm just wondering, you know, why at the 11th hour are we trying to do a change?
Well, let Mr. Pinson answer, and then we can go to Councillor Pennell.
I can, through your worship, I can answer that. It's when the clerk did her, and I'm speaking on behalf of the clerk, she can correct me if I'm wrong, but when she did her review of contracts coming to expiration this year, she notified me recently that it was coming to expiration.
Thank you. Yep, sorry, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Councillor Pennell.
Through your worship, what I was gonna say through this too is when we're asking why should we be going out for a request for tender, I think that we deserve that our taxpayers deserve for us to go out for a tender. When I'm reading that from 2018 to 2022, the average cost of these engineering services were $400,000. So I think that it would be nice to go out and see what else is out there. And as CEO stated, that these people might come back and be the best deal for us as well. But I think that we at least deserve, the taxpayer deserves us to go out and check this out.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Martin, and then Councillor Nori.
Can we tender this in time before the contract runs out? Didn't you say the contract runs out this end of April?
So through your worship, what we would do is extend it for a year so that we're not bucking up against the 30th of April on mutual consideration with to extend it for a year to allow us time to do the RFP.
If they'll allow us to extend
Yes.
it for a year.
Yeah.
Councillor Nori.
Just to continue, then I hate being the what if guy, but what if they say 5 years or nothing? We got a week and a half and we don't have an engineering firm. I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
Within the
that's all.
terms of the contract, it does state that the town can go out and tender other work. Considering the fact that we don't have any major construction underway this year, I think we're safe to say that we have the time to actually to tender a new one.
Councillor Hicks.
This is my last comment.
You can have as many comments as you want.
We, as a council, said that we would do our due diligence to ensure that we are spending the taxpayers' money in the best way possible. And if you put all of your eggs, back to poultry again, in one basket, you could end up with a really messy omelet. Jewel has been nothing but a great supplier. I think we all agree on that. They understand the business. It's not in their best interest to cut us off at the knees. They know us. They know the work that we typically do and the size of our projects, but I think we do have to go out. And I think if we do ask them for the 1-year extension, I would hope that they would have the business sense to agree to that, understanding where we're coming from as a public entity. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Shank.
I agree with what everybody said. As long as for $400,000 a year, you know, somebody's going to go ahead, it's going to stick around. So, but the point is, as long as when you're going your RFP, that when submissions come from other engineering firms, that you're comparing apples with apples. All right. Like, what is this person doing? Not that they're subletting to somebody else or whatever. If it has to be substantially less, you know what I mean? It has to make sense to, it just keeps everybody honest. All right. So fine, I agree with the 1 year, but the point is that as long as when the RFP is written up, that these are the services that are currently being provided, what are you going to, you know, with the roads department, so everybody is bidding on the exact same thing, or somebody's bidding more. Sorry.
If I may, your worship, through to Councillor Shank, we do have an engineer on staff, and I'm hoping that he can help us with this RFP, make sure that we're honest in terms of what we're asking for things. We're asking for the same things from all vendors.
There's another job for you.
Is there any other comments with respect to this? I think we're probably looking for, I guess the only question I have is are we in a position? We're not in a position to extend the 1 year contract unless we have consent of the vendor. Am I correct with that?
So, your worship, what I would do is make sure I came back to council at the next council meeting before this contract was due to expire, and make sure that we had consent of the vendor to do what we were asking for the 1 year extension.
And we will have time between now and the ending of the contract to do that. We've got another council meeting in April. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'll I guess if there's no other comments or questions, I'll look for a motion, and I think we're CEO is looking for some kind of direction with respect to this. We do have a staff recommendation. I'm not sure if that's what anybody wants to do or not, but I'll entertain motions. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Please bear with me. I was just in the middle of typing it. But I move that council receive for information the CAO renewal of general engineering service contract report. Further, that staff approach Jewel Engineering for a 1 year extension. And further, that council direct staff to issue an RFP for general engineering services in 2023 as part of a broad review of all services contracts during this term of council.
Great, thanks, Councillor Pennell. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hicks. Is there any other further comment, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. 9.3 Financial Services 2022 Council Remuneration. Do we have somebody speaking to that? I guess it'd be Nicole.
So I don't have anything further to add to this report, but I am available for question.
Does anybody have any questions of Nicole with respect to the council remuneration report that's before you? Councillor Nori, did you have any questions?
No,
Oh, sorry.
I apologize.
No, I thought I saw a hand over there, so. We don't have any questions. We've got a staff recommendation that council receive for information the finance 2022 council remuneration report as per attached Schedule A in the agenda before you. Look for a motion moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, and I believe Councillor Hicks has a question or a comment.
Through your worship, for those watching from home, this is simply a report that was showing what was paid out to the municipal councillors in 2022. So for instance, if you are a new councillor in 2022, we received $715.40. So this isn't about increases or anything else. Just want to be very clear about that. Thank you.
And that's for you new counselors, that's as of December, I believe.
As of December, yes.
I'm sure it'll look different next year, but.
Well, yes.
Any other comments or questions? We've got to move her in a second, do we? Yeah. We'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Financial Services 2022 year-to-date financial operational results. And I believe that would be you, Nicole.
Yes, that is well. So I have provided council and the mayor with variance analysis based on 2022 budget versus actuals. In the documents that I provided to you, I also had a variance explanation for anything that was kind of sticking out or needed explanation. So I'm not going to read through everything individually, but I am available for question or comment.
Thanks, Nicole. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Nicole? Councillor Shanks?
Thank you very much. This is what I'd love to see. And you're going to, if I had any other questions, you know, that I could pick it apart here or there or whatever. But the point is the capital will be coming at a later date when you have time to get it all done. And thank you very much. And great job.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Shank. We'll look for a motion. We have a recommendation that we note and receive the report with respect to the 2022 year-to-date financial operational results. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and expansion, PMI 2023-007, Rogers Communications Inc., 16-meter telecommunication pole adjacent to 301 Don Street. And I believe it would be Michael. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. This recommendation before council is with respect to a fairly small dish by Rogers, which is needed to help deal with some backlog issues as a result of a storm last year. It's a very small, it's just a telephone pole with a small dish on it. Unfortunately, it falls into the classification of a telecommunication tower as per Industry Canada's definitions. So the proponent who has been contracted by Rogers is seeking the town's I guess, comment or approval in principle around this location for this telecommunication pole with a small 2-foot diameter dish on that pole. So area residents were circulated and we're not aware of any concerns that were brought up.
Great, thanks, Mike. Is there any questions or comments with respect to the report that Mike's just presented? Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of comments in regards to applications for towers. The last one that we had, you know, they advertised in a different city and things like this. So when I got reading this one, I realized it's just a little 24-inch dish and such. But on the application form itself from the town, there's no date of when this was filled out. And if we could possibly add a date onto that, because then the letter is dated February 27th and it goes on and it states that we have like 30 days to get back to them. And we're only seeing it now. So I'm not even sure if we can comment on this because the time frame for comment is over from what I see. But this is just typical of what we normally see from these telecommunications is this type of a report. But I'd like to have it a date on it, and then also to not sure whether dated February 27th that we're only seeing it now.
It's through your worship. The letter with Rogers letterhead on it is what was sent to area neighboring residents. So that date for comment was for the essentially for Rogers to solicit feedback from area residents by that date. And then once those comments are received, then they put the report together for the municipality to consider in rendering a decision effectively. So it's not geared toward council specifically. It's really intended to be for the area residents that are within 3 meters of the height of the tower in a radius. So that letter would have been circulated to them along with a map and renderings showing what is contemplated.
So I put my head between my feet and say, I'm very sorry. I thought that this letter was for us as well. So I appreciate the response and the explanation, and sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Fidel. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that council receive for information, the growth and expansion PLSPIMI 2023-007 telecommunications tower report, and that the tower build justification report prepared by Eric Belchambers and Associates for Rogers Communications, Inc. And further, that council authorized a letter to Eric Belchamber and Associates stating that the town has no objection to the proposed installation of a 52.5 foot, 16 meter telecommunication pole on the property owned by CN Rail immediately west of 301 John Street. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. And justifiably so. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Growth and expansion, A2 Richard Street official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. I believe that's you, Michael. And do we have anybody speaking for or against?
Yes, through your worship, I believe we have the applicant in attendance to speak for if there are any questions of council.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, worship. So the public meeting associated with this application was held at the last meeting of council. I believe I mentioned at that meeting that staff have now switched to posting a notice on the property and circulating notice of public meetings and notice of what the application is seeking to residents within a certain radius as defined within the Planning Act. So this application was a good test of that. You know, we had around 60 to 70 residents that we directly notified, and we did not have any concerns brought up from any of the immediate neighbors in close proximity. We're still working through the site plan detailed design of the site functionality, but we staff believe that the site will ultimately function adequately, and it will blend with the character of the area with the conversion of the existing former church to accommodate 6 additional units. I'd be happy to take any questions, and if I'm not able to answer, then possibly the applicant can fill in any gaps.
Great, thanks, Michael. Is there any questions of Michael, first of all? Seeing none, is there any questions that the applicant, I see Mr. Isbester's here. Is there any questions that he can answer for anybody? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation the council receive for information, the growth and expansion PLOPMA 2022-099 and PLZACO 2022-098 82 Richard Street report. Further, that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment subject to the following conditions: that council consider and decide on the merits of written and verbal submissions received up to and including the council meeting, that should new information be received or further input received, raise points for further consideration, this report and opinion herein be revisited as needed. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns.
It's a very basic one.
Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, to Mr. Isbester. So I grew up on Richard Street, not far from this church. And I'm curious, are you planning on putting any sort of new exterior cladding so that it all sort of flows together and looks like one building?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've already started deciding that.
Oh, okay.
So it's going right.
Mm-hmm.
That will tie the back.
Okay, great. Nice addition. I'm glad to see the infill rather than the expansion, so thanks.
Great, thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we've already got a motion on the floor, and we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion's carried. Infrastructure services, utilities, raw water reservoir liner replacement update, and that would be Andrew.
Okay. Just through your worship, a couple notes. The reason that utility staff is back in front of council today is for 2 reasons within one report. We're looking to sole source the purchase of that liner and the cover through Layfield Canada Limited. And we're also seeking an additional $63,040 from our capital reserves to upgrade the liner to basically one of the best liners on the market currently. Just a couple points of interest. Once that reservoir has been put in place, it's going to be about 1,800 meters squared of water that it can hold. And so what that means for us from an operation standpoint is with the current 450 meter cubed tank that we have at the hill already, we'll have about 11 hours of operational time. If something catastrophic was to happen to our raw water main or our pumps or something at the lake station. So it buys us quite a bit of time. At the current rate, as we sit now, we'd only have a few hours. So we, something catastrophic happens, we might not be able to fix it in time to ensure we keep supplying water. Financially speaking, that $63,040 would increase our 2023 used capitals out of our used capital reserve to $2,990,520. Leaving $3,871,477. And that doesn't include any incoming impost fees or our working reserve. And I'm ready to answer any questions that I can.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Is there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, through your worship. Andrew, thank you very much for this. Been a long time coming. Since I've sat on council, we've been talking about this, so it's exciting for myself to see. And then the report, the extra money and sole source, the supplier not carrying over the conversion. And that was kind of hard setting, but when you were just mentioning about where the money was going to come from, that's all out of the utility reserve, correct?
Correct. Sorry, the utilities capital reserve, not the town's, correct.
Great, thank you. Because I did have some people ask me about this, and this is coming from the utilities, so it's a user pay type of thing. And as we know, staff has been really great to us to keep the tax increase very low. And I just want to make sure that people know that this is coming out of a user pay reserve from the utilities. It's great. I did some research, and you're right, these things are hard to find and where it is. So, and I see that this is installed as well.
Yeah, through your worship, yes, installed. We had Layfield on site last Thursday with operations staff just to get everything put together. They know this meeting was occurring tonight, so they know that they're going to manufacture a liner for us. It's just which one, if we're able to sole source it. So timeline, we are still looking at getting it in and installed this summer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Councillor Shank.
Yeah, so this is going on top of where the golf course is, right?
Yes, through your worship, correct, yes.
So the same size basically that you're putting in there, so.
Yeah, through your worship, yeah, correct. It's a removal of the old liner. Quick look at the substrate, which is sand. We think we just need to level it out and make it look a little bit better. And then they'll come in, and that company does the full install. We're going to get it ready in-house to save money with our public works crews. But after that, they'll do the full install.
Good.
I had a little tour of the pumping station, all right, down by the hydro plant. And when you saw the one leaking, that's going to be fixed this year, right? Because I have the luxury of living near the water. So if I have to irrigate, you know what I mean? So I understand pumps very well, but 11 hours, today's day and age of getting parts, and you only have 11 hours capacity with this.
So through your worship, our staff and operations staff have done a really good job of making sure we have parts that we need.
Yeah.
When a pump goes, we had a pump go at a 41 pump station. We got 2 pumps. So we have a backup one on the shelf so they can switch it out while they're fixing the other one. We have one operating. So we operate on that basis, but we haven't been able to fix that pump that you saw leaking until we get this in place. Then we have water to draw from where we shut that pump down and fix it correctly. And that's scheduled to take place later on this year as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
That makes, thank you that you have the foresight to have a reserve. reserve parts there.
Thanks, Councillor Shank. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Andrew, just while we're talking about 11 hours of water reserve, we still have the ability to pull from the river. Is that still in place?
That canal was something that the utilities department, oh, sorry, through your worship. That was something the utilities department before my time had worked through with the developer of that property to have that new cement canal built through that property prior to construction. I can't speak to where that work lies. I can follow up with you tomorrow in an email and answer that question. Christy might know where we're at with that, but that is the last resort to pull that water in and treat it. We're lucky in our area to pull such wonderful source water out of Lake Ontario and not have to deal with the turbidity and other things that might be flowing down the river.
Through you, Your Worship, if I might just add, yes, we do have the opportunity to pull from the river. The quality, like Andrew said, is significantly different, and there would be significant adjustments to our processes before we could do that, but it is an option. I did just want to sneak in and add that the 11 hours of capacity is specific to raw water. So we do have the tank and the tower as backup, which would, as long as we work to keep those full or significantly close to full at most times. So we would have, as long as everything was working with our treated water, we would have significantly greater capacity and redundancy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor.
Andrew, is there going to be some kind of a cover on this?
Correct. So the liners for both products are exactly the same. It's the cover that we're talking about.
Okay.
The difference in the prices. Yeah, so it's going to have a cover on it. It's almost going to look like one of those giant children's water trampolines. Not that I'm encouraging children to jump the fence and get on it, but it'll look like a giant cover rectangle, and we've got good coverage there with trees, which we're going to try to save as many as we can during construction and make it look aesthetically pleasing, given that it's next to the golf course. But yeah, it'll be interesting when it's done. We'll get you out there to take a look at it.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation that council receive for information the infrastructure services utilities raw water reserve liner replacement update report, and further that council directs staff to sole source the raw water reservoir liner from Layfield Canada Limited, and further that council authorize staff to use an additional $63,040 from the utilities reserves to purchase the CSPE liner for a total project value of $345,040. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, Andrew. Legislative Services, update on noise bylaw review. Would that be Madam Clerk?
So through your worship, this report is provided in follow-up to the report we brought earlier this year. The only comment I would have to add to this report is there has been some discussion about the proposed, including a line in the bylaw about pits and quarries. And we did want to make sure that it's very clear that anything the municipality does is still subject to whatever permit conditions the provincial ministries place on those operators. Their rules come first, our rules are secondary, just to make sure that that's really clear throughout the process. But if there's any other questions or feedback or direction on this, take those comments.
Deputy Mayor Calver.
So some of these recommendations, bylaw recommendations here, the operation of a pit or quarry or salvage yard, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next day. Actually, we have somebody in here tonight that Bert Nyberg is here tonight. He asked me a question on that because they need to load their trucks at 6 o'clock before everything opens. bylaw that was, but it's, is there any leeway in any of these times, or is this set in stone?
So through your worship, that is why this is here tonight. This is all very draft, very preliminary. We went out to residents to see what they thought. That's the feedback that's enclosed, which is mostly supportive of the change, proposed changes, but this is all draft, and that's why this is here to council, because some people will only see it once it's on the council agenda and give that feedback directly to yourselves.
We're not passing any of this.
No.
Because I mean, there's stuff in there about racing any motor vehicle other than a racing event. That's not really the bylaw. There we go. Sorry there. Thanks, guys. Operation motor vehicle way that squeal the tires, that's all done under Highway Traffic Act. Trust me, I know. Yeah, okay, it was just up for discussion then.
Yes, through your worship, I will add we do currently have a restriction in our noise bylaw for salvage yards between the hours of 9 PM and 7 AM. The idea was to have a less fluctuation in the times that we proposed, but again, this is all draft for council's consideration.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Is that good for Deputy Mayor Calver? Sure, come on up. And we normally don't do this, but I tell you what, we're going to bend the rules. How's that sound? What's your name, sir?
My name is Bert Naberg.
Right.
And I run the transfer station on Highway 41.
Right.
And we load trucks every morning at 6 o'clock before the public arrives for safety reasons. So we never had a complaint over noise, but trucks have backup alarms and the machinery got backup alarms. Is there any reason why we couldn't have, say, from 6 o'clock to the morning?
Well, I guess that's why we're here tonight is that we've gone out to the public and received some public input. Have we, I think if I'm not mistaken, have we, Madam Clerk? So we definitely can take this information from you tonight with respect to it. So, but I'll let Madam Clerk speak to that. So.
Yes, so through your worship, this is a silly question for me. What is your business?
It's waste transfer. So waste management, for example, brings the garbage to our place. We load it in big trucks and it goes to the landfill.
So through your worship, my understanding is that is not one of the uses that would be covered in. Instead, that would be normal industrial uses that are forming part of the primary business that the property has been zoned and approved for, and therefore would be one of the areas that are exempt from these
It would be
requirements.
exempt?
Yeah.
There you
go.
Reasonable noise arising from an industrial zone that results from an essential part of the process or practice established on that property. That is the intended language in
And
there.
I think reasonable noise would include backup alarms on vehicles. So, but yeah, Councillor Hicks.
Well, through your worship, and also draft noise exemptions, the noise created by the collection or disposal of garbage, waste, or recyclable material. Well, a transfer station, I think, for
But
waste would cover that.
only, it says only in extreme, if it is necessary. It goes on every day.
No, am I reading that wrong, Jessica? At
No,
the
I
end
believe
of-
the intention is garbage and recycling would be exempted normally because we,
But normally from 7 to 7, isn't it?
no, sorry, that 7 o'clock is only for salvage yards or pits and quarries.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Which that wouldn't apply to you.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or for construction activity or amplified music. Those are the things that have the specific time parameters set on them.
Okay. No, that's fine now. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming and putting your hand up and letting us know about it. So rest assured, I think we got her covered for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hicks and then Councillor Pennell.
Oh, sorry to move on. Through your worship. Jessica, one question on number 11. So yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing or similar sounds if you request a permit for a special occasion. So I don't know. That could be exempted.
Yes, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so through your worship, currently, we sometimes get a request to exempt the noise bylaw for if somebody's having a wedding, or they'll say, usually there's a plan. They say, we're gonna be outside, we're gonna have music, we're gonna shut down at midnight.
Okay.
Or whatever time they put in. And then typically we will ask, like, have you talked to your neighbors? Is there any concerns from the neighbors about it? But reasonable exemption certainly for special events.
What's the bylaw for the patios or the patio?
That is
that covered?
That also has a specific bylaw that applies to it and has their set hours of operations in that bylaw. I don't know them off the top
Because
of
of
my
the
head.
liquor license and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Okay, good enough. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
And we do, I know the last term we used to get them on a fairly regular basis. Somebody's having a wedding, or let the neighbors
Yep.
know that they might get a little rowdy past midnight. And we do
Can't
have the
imagine.
exemption for it. I know it may be somewhat foreign to you, but Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, worship. Through you to Madam Clerk. I had received a phone call today, and just a concerned citizen I forgot to mention of a construction company working within the boundaries of a hamlet. And I'm just wondering, I'm reading here that the noise exemption would be from 7 till 7. And I'm just wondering whether being within of a hamlet, if there's anything that can be done with that, or is it going to be just that one bylaw? I guess I'm trying to say is because there's residents so close to it.
Sorry, is the question that it should be longer or?
If my question should be longer.
No. Are they
sorry.
asking for the noise restriction to be shorter or longer?
Shorter, yeah. So especially in the morning, longer in the morning. That's all.
So through your worship, that time period, the 7 a.m. is not a change from our current bylaw. Our current bylaw states that the construction equipment is exempt between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So we've brought it back a little in the evening, but left the 7 a.m. start time from the current bylaw. That's really the reason for putting the times in, is it makes it a little easier to enforce this bylaw. And we looked at what the municipalities around us are putting as times, and 7 a.m. tends to be a pretty standard time. It's also one of the times that is used as a cutoff time in the provincial regulations around industrial noise.
Okay, I guess her concern is that, if you have a construction yard or something in an industrial area or a business area, that's fine. But when it's within the hamlet of a bedroom community, she was just wondering if there's anything that we can look at it differently.
So through your worship, if it's an allowable zoned use on the site, we can't unduly constrain their ability for that business to operate if it's a permitted use on that site. This is more intended for if your neighbor is building a house next to you, that construction is supposed to stop between those hours.
Okay.
You'd be looking more at those provisions around established commercial and industrial uses if it's an ongoing business use. But I guess staff can look into that and see.
As this is in the draft form,
Mhm.
let me gather my thoughts and I'll send you.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments?
I only have one. I
ahead,
don't
Councilor
want
Shank.
to belabor this, but Jessica, number 10, does that give the OPP enough teeth to go ahead with the problems that we have with short-term accommodation?
It is certainly our hope that
I know it's a draft. I just want to make sure that there's stuff there. So when there's problems that we can address those problems or give the OPP you know what I mean, the power to do it. Am I not correct? You're the expert on this, Terry, so.
Yes, through your worship, it is our intent that this, because it is a specific description of an activity in a specific time, we need to rely less on the determination of would a reasonable person consider this to be a nuisance, and you can just say, no, we have proof that this noise was happening in these restricted times. So that's the hope.
It's fairly subjective, and it's also fairly wide spanning. So I think it probably would, because like I say, it's fairly wide. It's got a wide swath. So I think it would probably be fairly easily enforced, I'm thinking. Okay, so good. Just by the way it's written. So. Good. Is there any other questions or comments? We've got a recommendation that council receive for information the legislative services update on the noise bylaw review report, and further that council direct staff to bring forward a revised noise bylaw based on the submitted proposal. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Nori. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Legislative Services 2023 outdoor patio license for the Loaf and Ale at 25 Dundas Street East. And that would be yours as well, Jessica?
Yes. So through your worship, we go through this process every year for this patio because it encroaches on a municipal sidewalk. Don't have anything to add, but I can take questions.
Are there any questions of Jessica with respect to this? And I can attest that we have dealt with this, I think, on every year since I've been on council anyways, is that they reply every year and they get a patio pretty much every year. But if there's any questions, now's the time to get them out. Seeing no questions or comments, we've got a recommendation that council receive for information Legislative Services 2023 outdoor patio license for the Loaf and Ale at 25 Dundas Street East report, and further that council approve an outdoor patio license for the Loaf and Ale from May 1st to September 30th, 2023 for the patio on the sidewalk in front of 25 Dundas Street East, with exemptions to sections 4A, C, and D of the outdoor patio bylaw number 0438, subject to the following conditions that are contained within the agenda. And I know that all those conditions are before us. Looking for a motion to receive. Councillor Pinal, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws. Bylaw number 2023-0027 to impose fees or charges for services provided, cost payable, or use of property by the town of Greater Napanee. I guess we'll look for a motion and then we'll do the first, second, and final reading. Moved by Councillor Pinal, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any comments or questions with respect to this bylaw? Seeing none, read a first, second, and finally passed. Bylaw 2023-0027. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2023-0028, official plan amendment number 47 PLOP MA 2022-099. Look for a motion to put it on the floor. Moved by Deputy Mayor Pinal, seconded by Councillor Pinal, Councillor Martin. You can tell I'm getting tired. Is there any comments or questions with respect to with this bylaw before the first, second, and final reading? Seeing none, read a first, second, and finally passed. Bylaw 2023-0028. All in favor of the bylaw? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 2023-0029 to amend zoning bylaws 0222 as amended PLZACO 2022-098. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns before the first, second, and final reading? Seeing none, read a first, second, and finally passed. Bylaw 2023-0029. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. New business. Does anybody have any new business to report tonight? Seeing none. Notice of motions. Does anybody have any notice of motions for this evening? Seeing none. Statements by members. Does anybody have any statements by members? Seeing none. CEO's remarks. Mr. Pinson, do you have any remarks this evening? for council?
Just a quick one, your worship. Last week, the chief and I had the occasion of having a visit by some folks from the Canadian military. Councillor Martin was asking me about that earlier today. They were conducting an exercise of a theoretical train derailment of all things with some refugees in town. So we had a good discussion around how we interact with other agencies, and we learned quite a bit, as did they, about how to work with small municipalities.
Great, thanks, Mr. Pinson. The forward calendar, I know we've all had an opportunity to look at it. Is there anything on the forward calendar anybody would like to speak to or talk about? Councillor Hicks.
I regretfully will not be able to be here in person for the April 25th meeting, but I will make every attempt to join by Zoom from sunny Myrtle Beach. Hopefully it's sunny. So we're on vacation for the next 2 weeks, starting Thursday.
Great.
That's it for me.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Appreciate that. Is there anything else? You may have just surprised Councillor Shane.
I think I did.
And he's not.
No, I
happy.
already do that.
He's not happy.
I already do that.
Look for a motion to confirm proceedings. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Martin. I will look for a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation of Town of Greater Napanee. Read a first, second, and finally passed. 11th day of April 2023. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Deputy Mayor Calvert, Councillor Hicks, comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks, folks, for watching. It's another early night, and we appreciate folks for tuning in. Thanks again.